So without further ado, thank you everyone for joining us back for season 3 of Icon Alumni Workshop. I'm your host, Anna, and welcome to, well, today's session is transitioning from university to the working world. I think it was a very important issue to a lot of us because I think, a lot of us have had internships, but then suddenly when you get thrown into working 24/7, you don't realize, not 24/7, for the rest of your life, you don't realize that it's a lot different from having just a 3-month stint in a company. And we thought that, as some of the more seniors here, we could share some of our experiences. But I know a lot of you attending have already started working as well. So I think it would be really fun to enter the breakout rooms later and just share all of our experiences, because I know we can all learn from each other. So here's our agenda today. We'll do a very, very brief introduction of the people with the really cool backgrounds. And then we'll be going into the sharing. So we have 3 speakers today, Gavin, Shbangi, and Paul. Format's going to be a little bit different. We'll have them share their stories and I won't be jumping in too much. So hopefully their stories touch your heart. Afterwards, we'll be breaking out into our breakout rooms. So you'll head back into those rooms that you were with your mentors, and then we'll wrap it back up in the main room. So just, be careful when you're clicking little buttons. Don't leave the entire session entirely. So an introduction of why we're here. Essentially, the Icon Alumni Group decided that it would be great if we could run some workshops to support anyone, any international students, Singaporeans who are very passionate about integration and diversity, and anyone really. And we'll want to support you guys, help you learn more, help you adapt to a new life, but also, I guess, life during COVID. We have a lot of topics covered. We have a lot of topics lined up still. And hopefully you guys have been enjoying them so far. So as you can see here, we're right about the halfway point, and we still have 3 more sessions to go. And basically we're trying to get you further and further down the working life. So now we've kind of learned a little bit about how to find a job, how to navigate looking for a job virtually right now. And then, for a lot of international students, how do I sort out my life admin, like work visas and things like that? If you're new and you have any questions about any of the previous sessions, feel free to reach out to any of the exco. I'm happy to cover it again. But after the session, we'll be talking about, now that you're in a workplace, how can you build a relationship, build relationships there, not just one romantic one, and also how to find your work-life balance. That's very important, so you don't feel burnt out, and also maintain a lot of your extracurriculars through working. And lastly, after you've made some money, how to smartly spend it so that you don't just end up broke and unable to go out. Not that you need to anyway. So a little bit about us. If you notice, most of the people with this little blue and yellow thing going on, we're part of the EXCO. If not, we're one of the mentors. So here's the EXCO. We have Haja over on my screen over there. We have Paul this way. We have Alice, Anna, myself, Ada with a beautiful professional photo right there, and Essa, who's basically on a campus screen. Yes, she's there. All right. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you want to know more about our activities coming up, want to be part of it, want to help out running, want to start a new project. We'd be more than happy to take you out. Now, for our speakers today, we have 3. The first is Gavin, who is an audit associate at EY. Gavin, say hi.
Hi.
Hi. He has extraordinarily white teeth, so his background is just shining through. Next, we have Shubhangi. Shubhangi.
Hi.
Hey. All right, who's an analyst at Game Theory. She graduated in 2018. She's currently stuck in India, so unfortunately, good to be home. And we have Paul. Paul, say hi.
Hello.
Paul has been the master behind the Zoom meetings so far, keeping time and tracking a lot of things behind the scenes. But today, Essa is covering for him, and Alice. So today he'll be sharing a little bit of his story as well. He's a production executive at Padang & Co., and he'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So, right on time, we can just get started with the stories. So, first up, we have Paul, who'll be telling us a little bit more about, I guess, the softer aspect of transitioning to work, right, Paul? You had some troubles with your social life?
Yeah, I go, well, such as it is, yeah. Possibly because I make jokes like this. Yeah, we roughly split our section into three elements that we thought were sort of difficult transition points for us and for friends from going from university into the workplace. So first section I wanted to cover was just like, came from a personal sort of story that I had, which was when I initially joined the workforce. One thing that I had issues or difficulties with was trying to just maintain friendships that I had back in university. Because when you're all in university, you all have sort of common activities. You've all got sort of the same stage of life. You've got a lot of sort of common cultural things that sort of bond you together. But when I went into university, some people they went back home. Haven't seen them since. Some of them did further studies, and the rest of them were also starting work, which was quite sort of a difficult transition to get used to as well, because there's all these new emotions of trying to get used to a new routine after 4 years of undergraduate degree. So, and it seems very first world problem, but I would keep running into the issue that Singapore is so small and everyone is so connected that in some ways that sort of devalues the worth of communicating with people. And so just my social circle, such as it was, slowly kind of contracting. I kind of feel it sort of going. And I had to sort of make the difficult decision of, what are the friendships that I can sort of hold on to? Because sort of the conclusion I had to come to was if something is important to you, you can make time for it, which isn't to say that your friend should drop everything whenever you want to hang out or something, and you should definitely have empathy for, everyone has their own things going on and their own struggles, but you've got to find friendships that can support you and where those friends will also allow you to support them. It has to be a two-way exchange. And it was difficult for me to do that. And it still bothers me sometimes when I think about some friendships that I kind of had to let go because it just didn't feel like it was a friendship. So that's, if we go to the next slide, social isolation is a real issue, I think. And just making sure that you can sort of surround yourself with people that are really going to be there for you and sort of create your own community around yourself, I think is an important step to just kind of ground yourself and give you some perspective and just some needed mental health breaks while you're working. Another point too that I had is in university brochures, the classic diversity photo, everything, you'll have fun with your intercultural friends and you should be very open-minded while you're going through a robust pedagogy. But I think that mindset is important to carry forward into the workplace as well, because when you're in university, like I said, you still have a lot in common with other people, even if it can be a very international place to be. I'm talking to mostly icon people, right? But that sort of variance gets multiplied by, an exponential factor when you go into the workforce, because now you're not just dealing with people from different countries, but you're now talking to people in different stages of life as well. You're talking to parents. You see all of the OK Boomer memes going around on the internet. There's a lot of variance, and in my own job, which I went into, there's 20 people on the team, and none of us are doing what we actually studied. One of our project managers is formerly a chemical engineer, and one of my bosses is reaching 70, and one of them's in their early 40s, and it presents some challenges, right? Because they're not going to value things the same way that your peer group does necessarily. They're going to care more about different things, and it's going to be harder to like socialize on the same level. But I think it can help if you look at it as an opportunity to sort of, learn from these people who have a lot more life experience than you do, and sort of treat it as an opportunity for mentorship. I think you can learn a lot from that, and it doesn't have to feel like you're so isolated, and that there's no one your own age to talk to, especially when you may be, like the newest person in the company or the youngest person in the organization. And I think one other emotional roadblock, which I don't want to go too much into because next week's session is going to be a lot on relationships and building those at work. But one thing which can easily like make your job like terrible or amazing is office politics. And no matter where you go, there will be some form of politics or some kind of power dynamic that you'll have to figure out how to navigate. And there's no like, one size fits all thing, or like, 5 handy ways to deal with morons. But like, I would say that one thing that you can do is just try not to participate in negativity, which is difficult too, because if you are the youngest person there's going to be a lot of pressure to try and fit in. But the issue with these kinds of things, with like the gossip or the rumors that go around, is, if somebody is gossiping to you about this lazy coworker or this terrible boss, what's the guarantee that if you happen to like, pile in on that person will just gossip about you to somebody else as soon as you turn around? And it's quite destructive. Like, it can really kind of ruin people as well. So I think one thing that can help is to try and like stay as objective about it as you can, because I mean, even to be frank, even by staying out of office politics, you're already kind of taking a position. So I guess one thing to remember is that behind these sort of like gossip things or like teasing things or rumors, there's usually some kind of truth. And if you can sort of look at that and sort of see objectively, okay, what part of that is actually accurate, and then sort of try and add to that something maybe constructive that you can put into the discussion. Like, it's like, okay, yes, actually this coworker is terribly lazy, but maybe like, he's got something going on in his personal life, or maybe there's something we can do to help him. Maybe if you just like take him aside and talk to him directly and just let him know, hey, what you're doing is actually really affecting the team. And I mean, that takes a lot of courage, frankly, because it's not, especially if you're talking to someone who's like more senior to you. But I think it's just important to not be involved in the toxic culture, but try to suggest something that's reasonable and that can actually be helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And am I almost out of time? Is that right? I just want to add like one tiny thing, which is it's not a tiny thing, but there is also the possibility that you may have to deal with prejudice, especially as like an international student in the workplace, because, and it may be systemic or it may be intentional. And what I mean by systemic is you may just sort of be victimized by a policy which is prejudiced against you by virtue of being the only person from your country, for instance. And it's just the fact that like everyone else in the company is maybe local or from somewhere else, and whether they mean it or not, like that office tradition may actually, affect you. In which case, like, I still think that an open and honest approach is the best way to deal with that. Like, just if there's a supervisor you can approach, just to like let them know, and it's like, hey, this thing is actually not a very inclusive policy, and you can tell them why. But in the event, and we can maybe talk about this more in the discussion room, so I don't want to take up too much time, but in the event that you are in a place where you feel like you're being targeted specifically, and it could even be by management, and there may not be a good solution, like, just remember that there is no shame in leaving. If you think that this place is really like awful and it's really ruining things for you, like, if you have to get out, just, that's not like the nicest thing to end on, but just be aware that there are friends and there's a community around you that could support you, and you don't have to stick around and put up with that kind of thing. Yeah.
On that note, Haja next week. I think
Yeah.
next week we'll be going through like, having friends is important, and so he'll hopefully help us, find those friends at work.
Yeah.
But on the note of being able to say no or finding that right balance with your management, I think that's one of the things that Shubangi wanted to share with us, which is how can you adapt to the work culture, right? How do you
Yeah.
approach your management, and how do you approach your mistakes as well, which you will inevitably make?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So basically, okay, like Anna said already, I think my part covers fitting in at work. I think just by the virtue of work being such a new place, new environment, new people, I think one thing that we all often struggle with is basically finding a balance between how to behave, how not to behave, what to say, what not to say, overstepping our, I guess, job descriptions and overstepping boundaries or setting boundaries. So, although personally, I didn't go through this because when my company had just set an office in Singapore in 2018, and I was in fact the third employee, including the managing director. So it was sort of up to like the first few of us to sort of guide that in the company in terms of what the culture should look like. So maybe like people who came after me would have struggled, but I can speak from my friend's experience and I'll tell you about her. So she in SMU, she used to be this, she is still, I guess, she is, I mean, I know for a fact that she is still. So she is this very, very confident girl who's um, very, very talkative. Like she aces at all these networking sessions. You would be surprised how many people she can talk to. She's super, like, she holds strong opinions and she feels that it's important to express them. And so basically that's her personality. So now after graduation, she got a job as a sales consultant at this company. And I guess given her background in marketing, her interests, and as well as her personality, I think like one would think that a sales consultant fits her personality like perfectly, and that's the job made for her. But I remember like a few months into her work, I had this conversation with her, and she said that she feels like the things that she's good at, she's not really able to like deliver that to the best in the office space. For instance, if there was a meeting, like although she is somebody who holds strong opinions, she found herself being extremely quiet during meetings, or even if it was just talking to clients over the phone for pitching the product. I think she said that I don't talk to them with the ease that I would otherwise speak to like strangers at a networking session. So, and I asked her, I was like, is it because you're not liking your job? Because I guess that can happen. It can put down your tempo if you feel like you've gotten the job that you want, it's exactly what you wanted, you're good at it, but once you go and it's not exactly what you thought it will be like, which can bring down your momentum slightly. But then she said, no, the job is like exactly what I want to do, and I enjoy the job, but it's just that I feel like I don't deliver to my best. And she said that because I have this constant worry that my colleagues would think I'm too headstrong or too dominating, because of which I probably am quiet during meetings, or I don't or I don't like speak to clients with that ease, because I'm scared that I will overstep like what I'm supposed to be saying. So I think in some way she started finding herself a little lost in the workplace, trying to balance out what she's supposed to be doing and what she's not supposed to be doing, just because I guess she was seeking some kind of a validation, and if she didn't get that, she had this fear of not fitting in. And I think it's very, very common. But at the same time, I feel like there are a few things that we can do to navigate this and not like feel this way. I think, and by the end of it, I guess all of us find a happy place in the work, and it's just a matter of time before we do. But if you ever do find yourself in this similar situation, I have like some tips for you that you can use, and some like uh, just some points to bear in mind. So I think, as cliched as this may sound, the first point is that be confident because you were hired for a reason. And I'll tell you why. So I guess, we all go through this rigorous interview process. So if we have been chosen for the job, then we like the manager must have, or whoever your interviewer must have thought that you're fit for the position. So you've already sort of proved yourself in that way, and there's no need to like change change the way you are when you're actually at the job, because you've hired for those very reasons which you're trying to like hide now. So I think be confident and be comfortable with who you are, because I think that's what got
Yeah,
landed you
that
the
they're
job in the
expecting
first
you,
place.
right?
I think
Like
the other
if
thing
they
is
hired
also,
you, they expect
yeah,
you to be
exactly.
that person.
They're expecting you. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think the other thing is, I think this constant desire to fit in also, I think it's different from an internship in the sense, because internship is temporary. So you know that, okay, fine, even if I don't get along with some people or if I don't fit in, it's just a matter of like 2 months and I'll be fine. But I think at the job, because you wanted to be there for a longer time, that's why you got into it in the first place. So I think uh, that's why you want to resolve all conflicts, you want to please everybody, and you want to like everybody. I think what helped me, even though I didn't go through this, but just in general, to reduce how daunting work can be, i think I think of work as a series of like group projects, and just like in group projects, there's bound to be conflict and there's bound to be people you don't like, and or you might like everybody. I think if you think of work like that as a series of group projects over a period of time, I think you're more comfortable with not pleasing everybody and not being pleased by everybody.
And I
Yeah,
think
I
like
think.
with group projects, you're bound to make mistakes, right? Like we all messed up sometime at SMU, forgot a
Yeah,
group meeting, forgot a
yeah,
deadline. And I think you can
yeah, that's
expect that
also
to
true.
happen at work as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think also like mistakes also tend to happen because once you go into a job, you think you should know everything. And I did this because in my company, like my job scope is basically building econometric models. And coming from a statistics background and an economics background, I went in thinking that I should be knowing everything. And if I don't, I'll come across as very dumb and stupid and somebody who doesn't know what she studied. So I would make a lot of assumptions. And I think that like hit me back because in a presentation, I did mess up slightly. So I think just ask questions. There's no shame in asking questions. And also, if like, I mean, there are some companies which might have a culture where you're just supposed to be doing what you're told to, not question anything. But I think you can always speak to your manager before you start your job. There's always this session that you have with your managers to set expectations, define what you want your work life to look like. And I think you can use that opportunity to say that you would like a culture which promotes questioning and which are open to like people making mistakes. I'm not saying that go ahead and make mistakes carelessly, but even if you do, don't stress over it. It's normal. And I guess you learn things eventually. And even
Yeah.
in like structures like a consulting firm, like which are not very open to making mistakes, I think they train you in a way that you pick up the work that way and you're more careful. So, but even if you do, there's no like, don't like get bogged down with it.
I think
And then the
Shubhangi, I
last
think you
one,
were about to say like no shame there. There's
oh
no
yeah, yeah,
shame.
sorry, yeah, no shame,
Yeah.
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 And I think
So I
the yeah,
Yeah, no, I think
yeah,
the no shame bit was actually a very good segue into, well, we heard Paul saying there's no shame and knowing when to like leave a workplace.
yeah,
And here we have Shubangi saying like, there's no shame in making mistakes, but also being yourself. Like you were hired for a
mm-hmm.
reason. But I think that kind of segues into what Gavin wanted to
Yeah,
share already, right? Which is where, well, there's no shame in switching careers completely. So, Gavin, maybe you want to share this shameless story that we
Sure,
had.
sure. Hi everyone, I'm Gavin. I'm an auditor from EY, and I'm currently switching a career change to the social service sector. So I'm currently applying for jobs under a management associate scheme with the National Council of Social Service. So I'm currently awaiting the results of a job interview which I did about 2 weeks ago. So some of you might be wondering, why the drastic switch in careers? To be honest, I did not really want to go into audit, but I went into audit out of a pressure to please my parents. However, all along, what I found interesting and purposeful was to serve communities, and I also have a long-term dream to do humanitarian work overseas in the future. However, during my first year in audit, I didn't think much about the link between my interests and dreams and the career which I was doing. I just thought, since I'm already in audit, I might as well just give it the best I have. So in my first day in audit, the working hours were tough, consistently to 12 to 2 a.m. every day, and I had to work during the weekends as well. But I just kept telling myself, you can't quit just because it's tough. You got to persevere. Towards the end of my first year in audit, I had a dinner with my friend who is also a career coach. So he asked me a question like, Gavin, so what do you want to do in the future? So I told him that my long-term dream was to do overseas humanitarian work. And he suddenly asked me, so how does being in audit help to train you to be effective in doing humanitarian work overseas in the future? And I realized that I couldn't answer him because I had never thought about it that way before. From that day onwards, I started to think about whether audit and finance was truly something that I wanted to do long term. From that dinner onwards, I started to think really hard about what career it was that could help me to train me to be effective to fulfill my long-term dream of doing overseas humanitarian work, as well as fit my interests and strengths in serving communities. After thinking about it really hard, I realized that a viable career option would be to work in the social service sector. However, I was initially really scared to talk about this with my parents, as I knew that my parents would reject this idea and tell me to settle for a more lucrative career in audit or finance. However, as time went by and as I continued with my audit career, the conviction that I had to take ownership of my career and not just do what my parents wanted me to do became stronger and stronger. Eventually, one day, I summed up the courage to go and talk to my parents about it. So as expected, it was met with much rejection from my parents, who told me that I had no prior experience in the social service sector and that I would not be able to make a good living out of working in this sector. However, I persisted in talking to my parents about this, as I knew that it was something that I wanted to try. Eventually, after much discussions and after many rounds of discussions, I received my parents' blessings to apply for positions in the social service sector. And today, I'm thankful that I have received job interview opportunities. And as I mentioned, I'm currently awaiting the results of a job interview I did 2 weeks earlier. So out of this very emotional and honestly difficult experience, I learned 2 important lessons, which I would like to share with all of you today. So the first lesson I learned is that it's really important to find purpose in what you do. A lot of us, when we leave SMU to go into the working world, will wonder, what type of job should I do? Should I do a job that pays me a lot of money? Should I do a job where there's decent career progression? And I think that factors such as money and career progression are important factors to consider. But it's also really important to find purpose in the career that you do. How does what you do add value to people or companies? Is what you're doing aligned to your interests and strengths? I think these are key things to think about when you're talking about finding a career that is purposeful for you. So using me as an example, I'm choosing to switch to the social service sector because it helps to add value to the lives of people by serving their social and emotional needs. And it's also something that I'm really passionate about. Realistically, most of us are going to work for the next 35 to 40 years of our lives before we retire. And finding purpose in what we do is what is going to give us the motivation to wake up every single day, to give it our best in what we do. And more importantly, to find joy in the things that we do. So the second lesson that I learned is that it's important to take ownership of your own career. You can switch slides, Anna.
I'm trying. No.
A lot of us, a lot of times when we leave, when we transition from school to work, our parents will tell us, or society will tell us what is the good job that we should do. And I think that it is important to take into account the opinions and the considerations of society as well as our parents. But remember ultimately that this is your life. This is not your parents' life. This is not your friend's life. So it's really important to take responsibility for your career and think about it carefully before making a career choice. Another thing that which most of you might be thinking of is, what if I hate my first job? What if I go into this job and I realize that it's not the right job for me? And to be honest, I think that's perfectly fine. But it's more important after that to then take ownership of your career and to think carefully what you would like your second job to be. You wouldn't want to be in a place where you're stuck in somewhere that you don't like, but you're not actually doing anything about it. So a lot of my audit colleagues, for example, complain all the time about hating audit, but sadly, most of them don't actually do anything about it. taking ownership of your career in terms of thinking about what you would like your second or your future jobs to be will enable you to keep moving forward until you eventually find something that you want to do. To conclude today's sharing, I just want to be honest with all of you and say that transitioning from school to work is really tough. There's no way around it. But I think that's okay, because ultimately everyone's experience is different. And at the end of the day, you also have communities around you, such as this Icon community, who can help you during your times of need. I believe that the important thing is to keep learning from your mistakes and to keep persevering in everything that you do in your future career. So I thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us share today. And I'll now pass on the time to Anna, who will break us up into our small groups.
I was so scared he was gonna wrap up everything for all of us and everyone will leave. Thank you, Gavin, Shivangi, and Paul for your sharings. I think if you guys are paying close attention to everything that they were saying, there are just a few key things, right? Like number one, things are not gonna go the way you expect them to, but that's okay. We all find our way through it. You might lose some friends, you might win some friends, and hopefully, if you need more tips on that, you come back in 2 weeks. But otherwise, the key thing is to like really be purposeful in what you're doing, whether it's making your friends, speaking to your managers, even as you make mistakes, and pick the right or wrong jobs along the way. Be purposeful, like reflect on it, decide all the time if this is what brings you joy, do a bit of Marie Kondoing and see what sparks joy for you, because ultimately we all don't know what we're doing, but at least you have your friends to do it with you. So with that nugget of wisdom, let's break out.
Anna.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure, for everyone's benefit, of course.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Gavin, would you have done anything differently with the benefit of hindsight?
Oh, definitely. Like, okay, to be honest with you, I went into audit, as I said, out of a pressure to please my parents. If I were to redo everything again, I think I will really sit down and think it through carefully, like what exactly it is I want to do, what are my interests and my strengths. Because I think, okay, like, I don't know if it's because of the SMU culture or what. I think somehow there's this emphasis in SMU that you have to get a job before graduation or you're screwed. And honestly, I think after being in the working world for 2 years, I think that is just complete rubbish. I think it's more important to really take time to ask yourself, what it is you want to do in the next 3 to 5 years. What would you like to achieve, and then from there, start doing proper research on the industry that you want to go into, and move on from there. So for me, I took up the audit job out of fear, and a lot of my friends also. They just took up a job because it was a convenient job offer that came, but eventually they're now in their first job and they have either left or they do not like their current jobs. So I would definitely have taken the time to think through it carefully and before I just jump into accepting any job offer. Yeah.
Thanks, Bye, for that question. We don't want to overrun too much, but does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask for the entire room? Any brave souls? No? No? Okay. Well, don't worry. We're going to break out into our little rooms now, and you can talk to the mentors that you're most familiar with at least. Just be open. Just know it's a learning space, and we've all gone through this. If you've also, transitioned from work to life, from school to work, feel free to share your stories as well. And I see you guys back here in 10 minutes. Well, welcome back. I hope you guys had a good time meeting your mentors again, or maybe for the first time. And hopefully they were so nice that you want to come back. Our next session is happening 2 weeks from now. So we do these sessions every 2 weeks. So on the 5th of August, mark it down in your calendars. If you want to join us, we'll be talking about what it actually feels like to be at work. So we've just talked about what it feels like going into work, and now that you're there, maybe getting a feel for things. How do you handle workplace politics? I think internally we were discussing a lot about how there might be cultural differences. Especially, there have been cases where you're the only international student in a very Singaporean group, or it just so happens that everyone's so diverse. How do you even find a way to fit in? And then, of course, we're all individuals. I think that's the one thing we've been trying to promote with all our workshops. find your strengths, find your weaknesses, but just remember that you are each unique, lovable people, and how you can use that to your advantage and get where you need to on in your social or career ladder. I don't know. Okay, don't be a manipulator. Those are not my words. And building relationships, of course, during COVID-19. We're building relationships. You guys don't know it yet, but one day we'll meet in person and you'll be like, hey, we're best friends. That session will be run by one exco and another mentor. Mai, who asked the question earlier. I can't see her right now, but if she can say hi.
Oh, she had to leave.
Oh, okay. Well, she was the one who asked Gavin a question earlier. And then Haja with his DIY background. We should run a contest for like the best DIY background at this point. But yeah, they'll be sharing a little bit more about how they found their relationships. Haja is still single if anyone is looking for a boyfriend. All right. And with that bombshell, we're gonna end our session for today. Thank you everyone for accommodating the new time. If you have any feedback on the format, the time, please feel free to drop it into the chat that you've been added into, or message us directly. And also, um, I want, as you guys get out your phones, if you haven't already, to scan the QR codes. I'd love for everyone else to unblock their video as we take a photo, a session photo. Normally, this is that point where everyone gets up and takes a group photo, but today you don't have to. We just have to smile and wave to the camera. I can't take the screenshot because I'm sharing my screen.
All right, counting down in 3, 2, 1. All right, thanks guys.
Thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, please scan if you want to join the groups. Left, I think, is Telegram. The right one is Facebook. Both of which we post our activities, our schedules, and you can ask people for help or want to go out, play some board games, watch a movie. Be socially responsible. Thank you, everyone, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.